I stood there on my front lawn, completely frozen in shock, as bleach dripped down my once immaculate charcoal suit. The expensive fabric was already discoloring before my eyes, white splotches spreading across the material I'd saved for months to afford. Karen Westfield, our neighborhood's HOA president, was storming away from me, empty bottle still clutched in her hand like some kind of trophy. Her face was contorted with an ugly rage I couldn't comprehend. "This isn't Wall Street. You're not better than us," she screamed over her shoulder, her voice echoing through our quiet suburban street. Several neighbors peeked through their blinds, too afraid to come out but clearly witnessing the whole thing. My mind was racing, trying to process what had just happened. I'd spent years building my business from nothing, and now I was being assaulted on my own property for dressing professionally? I had moved into Lakeside Estates just 3 months ago, finally able to afford a home in a nice neighborhood after years of sacrifice and 80-hour work weeks. My tech consultancy business had finally taken off, and this house represented everything I'd worked for. The neighborhood seemed perfect at first: well-maintained homes, friendly people, and a convenient location for my client meetings downtown. What I hadn't counted on was Karen Westfield and her iron grip on the HOA. From day one, she had seemed fixated on me. I noticed her watching from her porch across the street each morning as I left for work. I always dressed well for my meetings: tailored suits, polished shoes, the professional appearance my clients expected. After the second week, Karen approached me as I was retrieving my mail. "You know, most people around here dress casually," she said with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "All those fancy suits make it seem like you think you're better than everyone else." I had laughed it off politely, explaining that my business required a professional appearance. "I work with CEOs and investors all day," I told her. "It's just part of the job." But I could see something hardening in her expression, as if my explanation had only confirmed her suspicions. What started as passive-aggressive comments quickly escalated. 2 weeks later, I found a printed notice in my mailbox about a neighborhood dress code policy that I was supposedly violating. When I checked the HOA bylaws, no such policy existed. Then came the anonymous complaint letters about my disruptive presence and how my elitist appearance was changing the character of the neighborhood. I knew exactly who they were from. The situation got even more bizarre when Karen began scheduling surprise property inspections that somehow always coincided with my departure for work. She'd find ridiculous violations. My grass was half an inch too tall, my mailbox was non-standard, it wasn't, or my garbage bins had been visible for 15 minutes too long on collection day. Each infraction came with a fine that I successfully disputed at HOA meetings, which only seemed to infuriate her more. I tried to stay cordial through it all. My parents had raised me to take the high road, and I wasn't about to let someone else's inexplicable hostility drag me down to their level. Some of my neighbors quietly confided that Karen had been on a power trip since becoming HOA president, but most were too intimidated to stand up to her. I understood why. Her husband was a prominent local businessman, and she wasn't shy about threatening legal action against anyone who crossed her. Last Tuesday, things reached a breaking point. Karen intercepted me in my driveway, her face flushed with anger. "I'm sick of you parading around here like you own the place," she hissed, standing uncomfortably close. "Nobody needs to wear 3-piece suits in a residential neighborhood. Stop showing off." I remained calm. "Karen, how I dress for my work isn't actually your business. The HOA regulations cover property maintenance, not personal clothing choices." She stormed off without another word, but the look in her eyes should have warned me that something worse was coming. Today was critically important for me. I had a meeting with potential investors who could help me expand my business nationally. I'd spent weeks preparing my presentation and had splurged on a new navy blue suit for the occasion. As I stepped outside, briefcase in hand, feeling confident and ready, I didn't immediately notice Karen lurking near my car. "You just don't listen, do you?" Her voice made me turn. She was standing there, trembling with rage, a plastic bottle in her hand. Before I could process what was happening, she stepped forward and began spraying liquid directly onto my chest and arms. "What are you doing?" I shouted, the sharp smell of bleach immediately hitting my nostrils. I backed away, but the damage was already done. "Stop dressing like a CEO," she screamed, continuing to spray until the bottle was nearly empty. "This is a middle-class neighborhood, not some attention-seeking trash runway for your elitist vibes." I looked down in horror at my ruined suit as she stormed off. The navy fabric was already discoloring, white splotches spreading across the material. An investment of over $1,000, destroyed in seconds. More importantly, I had no time to change before my meeting. Years of work potentially ruined by one person's inexplicable hatred of business attire? That's when I noticed Mr. Chen, my neighbor 2 doors down, standing in his driveway with a shocked expression. "I got all of that on my security camera," he said, pointing to the doorbell camera that had a perfect view of the entire incident. "She's gone too far this time." Something in me shifted. I had been patient, professional, and respectful despite all of Karen's harassment. But this crossed every line. I took photos of my damaged clothing and called the police. While waiting for them to arrive, 3 other neighbors approached me, offering to provide statements about Karen's ongoing harassment campaign. It turned out I wasn't her first target. Anyone who didn't fit her narrow vision of what the neighborhood should be had faced similar treatment, though never anything this extreme. Mr. Chen downloaded the security footage and sent it to my phone. The evidence was undeniable, a clear, high-definition video of an unprovoked assault. I called my investors and rescheduled, briefly explaining the situation. To my relief, they were understanding, even sympathetic when I sent them a photo of what had happened. The police arrived within 20 minutes. After taking my statement and viewing the footage, they immediately went to Karen's house. I couldn't hear the conversation from my driveway, but I could see her gesticulating wildly through her front window, then pointing accusingly in my direction. When the officers returned to speak with me, they explained that Karen had tried to claim it was just a misunderstanding, and that she had been helping me remove a stain. The security footage told a different story. I decided to press charges for assault, property damage, and harassment. Within minutes, the officers returned to Karen's house. This time, they led her out in handcuffs. The neighborhood seemed to collectively hold its breath as Karen was placed in the back of the police car. Her face was a mask of disbelief, as if she couldn't comprehend that there might be consequences for her actions. Several neighbors had gathered on their lawns, watching silently. Some looked shocked, others seemed relieved, as if a weight had been lifted from the community. 3 weeks later, I attended Karen's court hearing. She was charged with assault, malicious destruction of property, and harassment. The judge, clearly unimpressed with Karen's attempts to justify her behavior, sentenced her to 6 months of probation, ordered her to pay $1,500 in restitution for my suit, and required her to complete 100 hours of community service. Most significantly, she was issued a restraining order preventing her from approaching me or my property. The HOA board unanimously voted to remove Karen from her position as president. As the verdict was read, I watched her face crumple in disbelief. "But I was protecting our neighborhood values," she protested as the bailiff led her away. For someone who had spent years wielding petty power over others, the reality of actual consequences seemed incomprehensible.